Hello, everyone. I suddenly hear some crackling noises. Hello, hello, people from around the globe. How are y'all doing? Good. Everyone's quiet. That's because I appointed no one. That's how it works. Whenever you ask a group of people, no one's going to answer. Sean, how have you been? We've been in London together with Brandon. So all of the team, well, part of the team was there. Sean, how was it? It was your first session at a big conference like this. How did it go?
It was brilliant. I mean, I think I said in the comments it was both amazing and terrifying all at the same time. But yeah, no, it was really good. Nice to meet some people face to face as well, which was great.
Sadly, I wasn't in the audience, but I've heard it was amazing. For the people who didn't, who are not following us as closely, we were together at NDC London, which is a big developer conference. So we've been there, and I met Sean for the very first time. We've been talking for, I don't know, 1 year, 2 years, working together on this amazing project, and we've never met in person. We changed that. So next on my list, I was actually expecting, if you've watched last month, Pedro to be joining someone in our offices because he was, he was going to be one of those traveling persons who's going to code from everywhere. But we didn't see you anywhere. So Pedro, you're at home in Brazil. What's going on?
Yeah, until tomorrow. Tomorrow is my first travel of the year, so pretty excited.
Oh, really? Where are you going?
Yeah. Mato Grosso is a state with a lot of waterfalls and some nature, so I will be there for 1 week.
Amazing. Really good. Brandon, you were together with us in London. You were just there, then you flew back, and now you're going to join us on Monday for it's formerly known as the Exam Expert Day. It's now the .NET MAUI Experts Day. I still hate that name. We need to come up with something new. Anyway, you're going to be there. It's going to be amazing. And we're going to meet again. So how are you doing?
Yeah, that's right. I think I'm just getting over the jet lag from London, just in time to jump on a plane to Germany tomorrow to get right back into the jet lag mix. But yeah, I can't wait to present at .NET MAUI Experts Day. And yeah, we're going to debut a brand new feature that we'll be talking about today in the stand-up. So we'll get a sneak peek of it today, and then on Monday, join the .NET MAUI Experts Day live stream to see it in all its detail and all its glory. We're really excited for this one.
We should have coordinated. There's not going to be a live stream. But anyway,
no.
You're going to miss it. But anyway, it's going to be amazing. You should have been there. I see someone in the chat saying, come to Germany. Well, Brandon and I and a lot of other great people are coming to Germany next Monday. So I don't know where you are. Germany is a big place, but we're going to be there. Jay?
Specifically in Cologne.
Yes, in Cologne. Yes, sorry. Yeah, that is good information to have. In Cologne. Jay, you're definitely not in Germany.
Yeah.
And I think it's still very early for you, right? You always get up at like 5 or 6 in the morning?
5 over here, yeah.
Oh my gosh. How are you doing?
Good time to wake up. I've been great. I also had a little conference over here in Seoul, .NET Conf Seoul. So I throw a little session about my community toolkit in Korean. And it was also Lunar New Year's Day last week, right? So one of the biggest holiday over here. So had some family gathering, having fun, eating lots of food.
Good. Much more important than all that work stuff. Are there any recordings of the sessions at .NET Conf? This one that you did?
Yeah, I think it'll be probably up next week or someday.
Oh, you should share the link we have a little group chat, of course, going on. You should definitely share it. I won't understand the thing, but it will be fun watching it anyway. Vlad, how have you been?
Yeah, I'm fine. I'm in preparation for the conference with cooperation with Microsoft, which will happen in Kazakhstan somewhere in summer. Yeah, so it's a big conference, probably first in cooperation with my current company and Microsoft. So it's not yet announced, but it's internally a lot of stuff happening. So
great.
Wait for updates.
All these cliffhangers and updates. It's going to be amazing. All right, great. That's great news, Vlad. I'm glad everyone is doing okay. So we are missing our cat person, Kim, who is also not in Germany, but also not in Australia anymore. He is in Switzerland these days. And I was going to ask him how his move went, but we're going to have to wait another month, I think, because he had some, I don't know, family stuff, which is way more important. So he had some things to take care of. And we're going to have to wait what is going on with all of his cat avatars on all over his social media. Anyway, we can't talk about that, so that's too bad. So I'm looking at the show notes, which are now public these days. I think as of last month, we did that for the first time. Great idea. So you can just basically see whatever I'm going to do here, and if you don't like it, you can leave. No, you're going to stay here. So right now, I'm going to talk about the Community Toolkit version 4. Actually, I've been talking enough. So I'm going to have Brandon talk a little bit about, oh, actually, there was another name. Vlad, I'm going to ask you about the Community Toolkit V4. What's going on with that?
Yeah, it was a great release with a lot of new features like media element and file saver and folder picker, but also it was a release with a lot of bug fixes. We fixed about 10 bugs there. Yeah, it's probably the most stable release. So we recommend to update to the latest version, and that's it. Continue using
Absolutely.
our Community Toolkit library.
Let's just be a little bit Apple about it. This is our best release yet, right? This is better than all the ones that we ever did. Yeah. So you mentioned the media element, which is great. Well, actually, let's stick with this one because you did the great file saver and the folder picker and all that kind of stuff, which is actually like inside of the Community Toolkit. And why I say that, we'll get to that in a little bit. So we have all this great stuff in here. We have, of course, the documentation up for that as well. So you can see how to get started with all of this, what it does exactly, what it can do for you. But we also introduced the media element. Finally, we've been talking about it forever. And we finally released it. So version 1.0.1 already, because we had a weird bug. But we released this, and I already got a couple of questions like, hey, I installed the Community Toolkit, but I couldn't find the media element. That's correct, because we released it as a separate package. So it's kind of like under the Community Toolkit umbrella, the family, but we released it as a separate package because specifically for Windows technically as well, it has an extra dependency. For Android, it has an extra dependency. So, for the people who are not interested in media element, I don't know who that could be, but you have people. They don't get stuck with all these dependencies, and you can just get the Community Toolkit or just the media element if that's what you want. So we've released that. We have some good responses to that already. People were waiting for it. People are trying it out. I also found some bugs myself after releasing this. So this was actually one of them. We went to 1.0.1 almost immediately because the dependency on Windows had a mismatch with the version that .NET MAUI is using from Windows, so it had a kind of like weird experience there, which we fixed immediately, so then you don't have to worry about that. And I actually was working on some bug fixes earlier today with some minor things that you hopefully didn't even discover yet, but I did, and you're going to be never going to see them because I fixed them already. So that's out there. Go out, use it, and we're planning on new features for this as well. I got a lot of questions like, hey, full screen is a big thing. It's also a very hard thing. I don't know, and some other things. So if there's stuff that's important to you, go to the discussions, open new feature requests there, follow our procedure for the stuff that you want to see there. And of course, not just for media element, but for all the things. Also, coming soon, I've heard in the hallway tracks that it might be tomorrow. Who knows? The Community Toolkit MAUI markup, so the C# markup extensions. Brandon knows all about that.
Yeah, thanks, Gerald. And I don't have a cool release with release notes to show off just yet, but we'll give you a sneak peek here of what this new feature is. So if you've ever used the MAUI markup NuGet package and you love creating your UIs in C# like I do, you're probably really, really familiar with making bindings. Well, tomorrow we will be releasing version 3.0. So we're bumping up the major release, since this will hopefully revolutionize how we all use or how we all make our bindings in with .NET MAUI markup. But long story short, the way we do bindings today is all string based, and it's view model and view shouting back and forth using iNotify property change, saying, hey, this property changed. And the view goes, oh, okay, I actually have a binding to that. So I'll update my UI accordingly, but it's slow. It uses reflection. And a long time ago, probably about a couple of years ago, the .NET MAUI team introduced what are called typed bindings. If you've ever used XAML, you'll probably know them as compiled bindings. But basically avoiding all the nasty reflection. And now we're able to bind directly to the properties in our view model. So get a little sneak peek here. This is an example of binding a label's text property to maybe you have a property in your view model called description, or if you want to do a two-way binding, similar idea. Well, this is how we get the value, and then this is how we set the value. So this way is a lot more efficient. We've been really mulling this over for the last couple of months. You can see I opened this PR back in November. Was talking about it with Gerald and Sean when we were in London together last week, and we're like, you know what? I think a couple more unit tests and this will be ready. So huge shout out to Sean. Sean's been cranking out the docs because the docs everywhere right now show how to do bindings for everything. So bindings for converters, bindings for behaviors. So Sean went through with a fine-tooth comb and updated everything because this will be our recommended way. So there's nothing wrong if you never update your bindings and continue using the current / previous way. That's cool. But we do recommend this because it does avoid reflection. But we're not going to get rid of the current / previous way anytime soon, not until these are fully baked. We want to make sure everything's feature complete. We want to make sure we didn't miss anything because there's a lot of nuances here and we don't want to break anything. So this is the recommended way forward. Look out for version 3.0.0 of MAUI Markup tomorrow. And then on Monday, if you can, come out to .NET MAUI Experts Day, or Mexperts Day, as we've been calling it in the comments. Shout out to George Lighthead. But if you can make it out to Mexpert Day in Cologne, Germany, I'll be presenting and essentially debuting this to the world. So very, very exciting stuff.
Absolutely. And yes, tomorrow is a Friday. We don't care. We just ship it on Friday. We've done most of our releases on Friday, actually, and it hasn't really bitten us yet. So we're just going to continue doing it. So that was all the announcements that we have, which is, not the slightest. But we also have some proposals coming up. So Vlad, I see that you can talk a little bit about Modal Windows for desktop apps. What's that all about?
Yeah, that is a feature which probably I would like to discuss, not like voting for it, because as for me, what is this feature about? It's similar of what we already have, like pop-ups together with Windows, which are a part of .NET MAUI, also a part of dialogues. So it's like a combination of all of these three terms, and a new feature proposed called Modal Windows. So as for me, I don't know, should we include it in our library, or can it be achieved the same result by pop-up? Maybe we can enhance pop-ups with some additional stuff like resizing, dynamic resizing like a window, or is it possible, or should we create a new separate Modal window stuff?
Yeah, so I think what this is, I've been talking a little bit about this with Mike, who opened this proposal. I think this is specifically for the multi-window scenario. And specifically for desktop, which it kind of already says, because on desktop you have that concept of a window that can actually be modal, right? So you can new window and you can't really escape it unless the developer has provided some way to get out of it, basically. Which is obviously a thing on MacCatalyst, which is kind of interesting because MacCatalyst obviously uses the iOS APIs. It's basically an iOS app running on your Mac. So the APIs are not really inside of iOS, obviously, because that doesn't really have a modal window concept, at least not the same way as on desktop. And for Windows, it's kind of obvious. For Windows, there definitely is APIs, and WinUI, I assume there are APIs for that that we can leverage. Yeah, so in terms of can we use pop-up, I haven't used pop-up in like desktop scenarios mostly, but I can see how this is, at least for behavior and kind of like from a user's perspective, how it looks and feels, that this is kind of like a different thing than a pop-up, and a pop-up can never really go outside of the actual window, right? So actually here there's some stuff about why it needs to be a window as well. So there's great discussion going on in the discussion here. I don't know, any other thoughts here from other people?
I know with pop-up on Windows, we have the issue that it certainly isn't modal, is it? We have the issue that as soon as you resize the window, it hides because it's using flyout. So we'd have to rework a bit, at least on Windows, in order to achieve that, which might not be a bad thing. We've had a couple of bugs that have mentioned that it disappears in that scenario.
Yeah, I go ahead.
Sorry, Vlad, Karen.
Oh, okay. So as for me, half of the features which requested by this proposal can be achieved by pop-up, like get result, show the content which can be dismissed on tab outside of pop-up, like dim dismissed pop-up feature also available already in our pop-up, so it can already work as a modal window on Mac Catalyst. But yeah, as for Windows, I investigated using like pop-up, native pop-up instead of flyout. Yeah, but we can use it. It fix some bugs, but it will break some current behavior on Windows, like Anchor. At least it didn't work well when I tried to implement it. So yeah, maybe by implementing absolutely new API from like a window, it will be like a native window, like dialog window, how we call it. We may like split and do not like make pop-up very big feature with a lot of which cover all scenarios. But on the other hand, it will be a new API which will need to support, which will need to implement, and maybe it may be confused for user. What should actually I use? I have pop-up, I have modal window. What is the difference between them? Also here it's mentioned that it's specific for desktop app. So for the one hand, we want to support all platforms, including Android, Tizen, iOS. But on the other hand, this feature it's really specific for desktop and will mostly use on desktop. So
on that topic, actually, there's a proposal coming up later, or a discussion with another desktop specific bit of functionality.
Yeah, and Gerald, maybe because .NET MAUI itself has a lot of desktop specific features like pointer support. How do they implement that? Is there a framework that we could follow in their footsteps if we want to do just desktop specific features?
Well, I'm not sure if that's actually. Yeah, I guess there is for like setting the Windows size and that kind of stuff. I'm not really sure. Desktop is not usually my area of focus. I could check how they kind of like do that, but the stuff that was added recently, like a lot of the cursor stuff and stuff like that, I think that also works on Android and iOS. Like you can these days plug in a mouse and trackpad and I don't know whatnot. So I think it should actually work across all the platforms. It's probably going to be mostly used on desktop, but it should, in theory, work on all the things. But saying window sizes and that kind of stuff, that definitely is something that only works on desktops. From the top of my head, I don't think we have anything to kind of like prevent you from using those APIs on other platforms, but they just don't have any effect. But I'd have to check.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I was just curious because I see one way we could implement this if we want to move forward with it would be to, like, in our code base, we would just have a file called, let's say, modalwindow.macOS.cs, and we'd have another file called modalwindow.windows.cs, and those would both implement whatever interface we'd define, but they just wouldn't exist for iOS and Android. So in your code as a developer consuming the toolkit, you would have to do like an if def to say, if on Mac or Windows, run this line of code. If not, then handle it differently. And so I could see that being a way. I don't know. Or if there is a mobile similarity or like a similar feature on mobile. I don't know either, because there is mobile or modal. Like you can say, what's it? Something modal async to show modal page. So maybe we just do that on mobile. But yeah, this is an interesting idea. It's going to definitely consider some architecting before we jump into the feature part, figuring out how to do desktop specific things without making the developer experience too annoying with if defs and stuff like that.
I think it can be implemented like an extension method for the like window show modal. And in that case, maybe it will be our extension method, but it may be display native MAUI window, and set some specific property to it, like use modal window, so it will be always on top of other existing windows of application. If we can achieve it, maybe it will be the simplest way, so we do not need to like implement the whole UI for the whole window, for the whole modal window, and just the extension method. We already have some extension methods. Maybe we can achieve it like this.
Yeah. There is a good question in the chat by George. What about Tizen and Modal for J?
Well, just like other platforms like Android, iOS, providing the multi-platforms is definitely not the common scenarios on Tizen 2. So the first thing in my mind is the unexpected issues we could face with to provide the multiple windows. So, and also the feature is not provided on the native Mac for this, like providing the multiple windows for this. So as he mentioned on the drawbacks, so I think there's some risk. So right now I think I can't tell before we actually try implementing this. So we can't expect.
Cool. And I'd say, Mike, if you're out there, obviously, thank you so much for raising this discussion. But yeah, Mike, if you have any ideas, let us know in terms of architecture and how we might be able to implement this. But we're entering new territory, so this is fun. We get to figure out new things, and I don't know, yeah, figure out new ways to do things. It's always fun.
Yep. All right. Seems this needs a little bit of more discussion. So I think we'll just leave it at that, see if we can put some feedback, get some more information in here. So let's move on to the next one. Pedro, improving our NuGet package quality. What? Our NuGet packages are amazing. Like each one is better than the next one. What's this about?
Didn't remember to put that one, but it was a long time ago, and is about to adding some more validation and features from the NuGet package. One step was the source link that was not quite working before, and that is a NuGet package to handle that for us, and we added. And I cannot remember well about this turn-on package validation, to be honest. This was a long time ago, but yeah, and I didn't remember to put that on discussion as well. Can we skip that one and I move back? Oh, actually, Vlad added that as a
Yeah,
discussion. Not sure
I
if you
added,
want to talk about that.
yeah, I added because I started my list from the first issue which we had in our backlog and go to the newest one. So yeah, I found that it's like probably we already fixed it and can close. Just if not,
Well,
let's yeah.
yeah, I'll
let me-
double check that and see if we can close that one.
Easy.
End of discussion. Easy, easy. All right. Then the next one, iOS specific pop-up arrow direction. I see this is assigned to Pedro, so I'm not sure who's going to talk about this, but someone talk.
Yeah, I also
Okay.
added this feature to discussion. Probably I can share what we already have with arrows. Oops. Yeah, like this. So we have this arrow already in pop-up. Also, we can move somewhere. It appeared here. It can appear on different sides. So I don't know. Do we actually need this feature,
That
or it's already implemented?
we need that feature because the way that is implemented today, the platform choose where the arrow will be, and having the ability to implement that one will give the power to developer to put the arrow wherever they want that to be, instead of the platform choose the location. And that is a platform specific thing, and I was waiting the .NET MAUI team to work on. There was an open issue on the .NET MAUI about porting those on platform methods and patterns to the MAUI, from Xamarin Forms to MAUI. And I was waiting they finish that to like follow the implementation on that one. But I believe the issue is still open. I checked it the last month, I believe, and was still pending items on that. So this is on hold as well.
Got it.
Cool. And Pedro, whenever you get a chance, could you add that link as a comment on this proposal then?
Mm-hmm.
That
Sure,
way
sure.
everybody that comes along in the future can follow along too. Thanks.
Mm.
Awesome. Okay. What do we have more? Now we move over to a couple of issues that we want to kind of discuss. This is a really, really old one. I see. Opened August 19, 2021. I can barely remember what I ate yesterday, but I don't know. Hopefully,
I remember
Pedro.
that one.
Oh, sure.
But I believe we can remove that. But the general idea of this one was because the .NET MAUI has a MS build task that will verify if the project has any reference to the Xamarin Forms, and will output a build error with the message saying, hey, you still have some reference to the Xamarin Forms, and we should not do that. Probably people migrating from Xamarin Forms to MAUI, and maybe forgot to remove the .NET Standard Forms reference. So I had that idea to create that same build task for us, and that way to prevent the users to have the MAUI community toolkit package and the Xamarin community MAUI compat package installed in their project. So make them not compatible. So like you need to choose one on another. But since we didn't see so far any issue or any bug issue around that or anyone complaining about that, I believe you don't need to add this complexity to our library. So I believe this, in my humble opinion, we can close this issue as not solved.
I think that makes sense
All
because I could see, and I still have plans to port my Git Trends app from Xamarin Forms to .NET MAUI. Just need to carve out the time to do it. And yeah, thinking about how I might do it, there might be a period where I have both NuGet packages in my app just as I'm doing the migration. And yeah, I can actually see if we made this an error instead of a warning, then all of a sudden we've just gotten in the way of developers migrating. But okay, cool. Should we close it right now, Pedro?
I would say yes.
All right, look at that. Fixing bugs the best way possible.
Live on stream. Boom. All right. Next one we can close. Status bar behavior frame in Gel. Okay, no, maybe we can close that one. Vlad, you know a little bit about this. It's on iOS, and I think if I remember a little bit about this, the status bar, I mean, it's not really a thing on iOS. So what we do is we just add a little view on iOS, and we give that the background color that you want. But it's not working on Shell together with Shell. Then I assume.
Yeah, I left a comment. I just investigated it today and added our needs discussion label. So if you scroll down to the my comment, you can find that it's a part of content page. You can see I added a background color for the content page, red, and it's appear as a part of content page. So content page starting and then its content going. So our status bar works correct. So it's added it exactly above the content page. So probably as a workaround, I don't know, user can just set the background color he wants for the content page, because that part is not already a part of the status bar. So that is why we do not. So this issue not about the status bar, but probably about the space between the start of the content. If you scroll down, it was a grid probably. Yeah, it's a grid. So between the so it's like a frame between the content page and the content of it. Yeah. Then we have a grid with the background green.
Did you try to put the padding as 0? Maybe there is some default padding.
I checked the default styles in the page, but there were no any padding there. So maybe it's can also be like a workaround just to investigate, but
Crazy idea, Vlad, and I don't know if this is the right way to do it. It's probably a little hacky, but since we are like, this is a behavior that you add to content page, and the workaround that we're going to recommend to developers is to just set the background color of your content page to match the color of your status bar. I mean, would it make sense for us to set the color of the content page when you add this behavior, or is that going too far?
Actually, this this home label is a part of a content view with the background. So it's already part of a content page. And yeah, if we're talking about status bar, it works as expected. It works correct. Then we have some space inside of content page, beginning and the content and its content. Yes, so just need to check if it's there any padding or it's another space somewhere generated. But yeah, if we're talking about status bar, there is no issue with it.
Yeah. So maybe what we do is, or the solution for this is to add it to the docs. Maybe on the status bar behavior page, we could have a little troubleshooting section or whatever we want to call it, where I mean, this screenshot honestly is perfect because you can see exactly what's going on with the red and green colors, and you can see like if you notice a spacing, then you can fix it. lots of air quotes by me today. Fix it by setting the background color of your content page, because yeah, I think us setting the background color of the content page would probably be too aggressive, because if this grid here wasn't green, then all of a sudden your entire app would turn purple, which would definitely be more confusing than just this little line of missing colors. So yeah, I don't know. What do you guys think, aside from the docs and advertising this as a workaround?
Yeah, so there's one, and that was my thinking as well. There's one person in the chat saying the root cause must be the calculation of the save area. What was it? So I think because it was specific, this issue was specific to also like the iOS 14 or rather the iPhone 14 Pro, right? So the one with the dynamic island. I think. Oh, that must be it. So I think what's going on is that for the dynamic island, I remember seeing something like this. There is a little extra thingy that's added. So it must be something like that. I'm talking with my hand before my mouth, which is not great if you're talking into a microphone. So yeah, I might have a look at this actually before we just put it in the docs and say like, hey, do it like this, because I think there might be an actual fix for this maybe, which is kind of interesting. It would be dependent on how it's implemented because I assume that we do it kind of like the right way, following Brandon's example, is because we are using that status bar frame thing, right?
There is an issue on the MAUI repo that I shared on the private chat. So yeah, I remember that as well. So
very similar. Yeah. And and SD Mutuna, hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly, is saying maybe using navbar is visible equals false. But feel free to jump into the repo if you have any ideas. We'd love a PR and
absolutely.
And yeah, Gerald, maybe keep an eye on this one in the MAUI repo.
Yep.
Because if they fix it, then we don't have to do anything, right?
Or unfortunately, Day is me in this case. Also.
And you do such a good job, Gerald.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, so there's definitely something here, but well, let's move on. We have to dig into this one. I think there's like an actual fix that we can come up with here, but it's we're working on it. Yeah, so this one, I was going to look at this one as well. So there's a crash for the media element, which apparently didn't happen for the preview, and I have some idea of what might be going on. Because this says UI view controller hierarchy inconsistency. And what I kind of like put in there last minute, because when I was watching the application output, and when you would go into full screen on iOS and macOS, it would say like, hey, this view controller, it doesn't have a parent, basically. That's what it came down to. So what I did, I fixed that up right before we actually, released it. But apparently this might have some kind of side effect that it's now not working in certain scenarios. Or maybe this was already in there, who knows. But anyway, I have some idea of where I need to look for this. So I definitely take a look at this one.
Yeah, interesting.
It seems to go, something with shell. Yeah, I didn't really, okay. So,
it's always shell.
It's always shell. No, Shane, we love shell. Sorry.
Shell's like the DNS of mobile.
Yeah.
Mobile developers.
It's always DNS. MCT 001. Oh no, it's 007. Pedro doesn't recognize library. You know all about the quality of our NuGet packages apparently. So what's up with this one?
Can you scroll down a little bit just to make sure that I am thinking the correct one? So yep.
Yeah, this is probably the one. It's been around for a while that we haven't been able to figure out.
But yeah, I believe there is the people that that uses our community toolkit as inside a library, right? Like another Y library, and I believe that we discussed that. Not sure if it was in Standup or on our private channel, but I believe the solution was to just disable the analyzer. I believe that I posted. Not sure if it was on this issue or on another issue that is related to this problem as well. The developers can just go there and ignore the analyzer on the library, but the way that we build and design the community toolkit to work is to work on the mobile applications, the mobile application project, and not for library projects. So I believe that we decided to ignore this and say, okay, if you want to do a library with the community toolkit, you will need to handle that by yourself. And for libraries, we recommend you to use the community toolkit.core because that doesn't have any mobile project specific tool or helper. It's just like a vanilla library and APIs and interfaces and primitives and stuff like that.
Yeah. So yeah, I'll definitely accept the blame for this one because yeah, like Pedro said, we just didn't anticipate folks using our library in their libraries, which nothing wrong with, and flattered that folks are doing it. But yeah, as they point out that in their library, they'll call the line .use MAUI community toolkit, which is required for us because that's what wires up all the handlers underneath. And so if you don't call it, then yeah, things like pop-up won't work, media element won't work, toast won't work. But I was just at NDC London, and Sean and I were in a awesome talk about Roslyn analyzers, and I learned that there is a I'm blanking on the exact term for it, but basically an analyzer suppressor. So it's like a de-analyzer, and so yeah, one idea I did have, Pedro, and again, I don't know if this is the solution or will be the solution, but we could have another library called like community toolkit.maui.library, or probably a better name than that, but that NuGet package would include the, again, de-analyzer, analyzer suppressor. Sean, if you remember the word, let me know. But we could basically write another analyzer that suppresses our analyzer, and everything else would be the same. So that would be the library that you would add, or the NuGet package you would add if you were building a library that wants to use MAUI Community Toolkit. But is that going to make things too complicated? Are we going to confuse developers who are just making an app and not a library? I don't know the answer to that, but that was something I just learned existed, and maybe could be a solution, or heck, maybe we just write a doc and we provide the source code to say, here, copy paste this into your library if you're using Community Toolkit. But Sean, do you remember more about that stuff than I do from the session at NDC London?
I remember us both turning and looking at each other as soon as we saw it. I'm just trying to go back through the slides and see if I can actually find out what the official name is. Diagnostic suppressor.
Yeah,
I think was the one.
Yeah, so I could see a world where maybe in our source code repository we have that diagnostic suppressor written, so you would just copy paste that into your code, or maybe we just put that in the docs. That might be easier. But yeah, I don't know. I'm a little hesitant to release another NuGet package. We have 4 or 5 already, and the reason I say that is I've seen folks in their apps, they'll add, say, direct references to communitytoolkit.maui.core, even though they don't need to because they're already using communitytoolkit.maui. And then I've seen folks use the .use MAUI community toolkit core extension method that they don't need to. And so I feel like there's already a little bit of confusion with the core library. And I'm hesitant because if we create communitytoolkit.maui.library, that adds in this, I already forgot what it's called, suppressor. That might confuse things for the 99% of developers who are just trying to use the toolkit in their app. They're not building libraries, but I don't know. What do you guys think?
One question, like if like we share the diagnostic suppressor, I believe that is the name, and the people put that in the library and release, and someone is on his mobile application downloads our community kit and that library that uses the community kit, that will block our analyzer and on the mobile, on the final project, because if that happens, that will break our idea to help users to not forget to add the user community.
That's a good point. So we'd have an issue someday in the future where somebody's, well, actually, no, if the library is calling it for you, shouldn't the library wire up also like the pop-up handlers for you if they call .use MAUI community toolkit? I guess you'd have to hope that the library creators are calling that for you.
And another point of using the community.MAUI as a library that is an issue is the way that the .NET MAUI register the handlers and some custom controls, because it is ordered. So, for example, someone created a new drawing view, and when you do using my custom library, that will override their handler and the content view for the drawing view. But if you have a second library that also overrides something on the drawing view, and does that could mess up the things, because the last one will be the choosy one to be the default one, something like that. So yeah, there is. I would say there is a lot of issues, and by design we do not think on those issues when we are developing the community kit.maui. So yeah, not sure if we should encourage that.
No, those are good points. Yeah, and I'll say the good news is, like, I've done experiments where I've created a little sample library that uses the MAUI Community Toolkit, where I call .use MAUI Community Toolkit in my library, and then I add that to an app, and I call .use MAUI Community Toolkit again in my app, and there's no side effects from calling it twice. So I understand it's a little weird as a user to install somebody else's library and then being told you have to add .use MAUI Community Toolkit, but the good news is there's no side effects, or at least no known side effects that I can find, and nothing's been reported. So it, other than being a little strange, a little annoying, everything still works. So that's the good news.
Well, I would say that the issue will be presented when some library overrides the handler, and that will be that could be the issue, because the handler is the mapping for the control, and could remove our handler to put the handler, and that could cause some strange behavior. But yeah, we need to test that and verify how that goes. This is our assumptions.
Yeah, and I even spent a couple hours on this on my flight home, more than just a couple hours, almost the entire flight home, using all this new knowledge that Sean and I just learned, because I had another idea was, what if I just put the analyzer into a NuGet package, and then we reference that NuGet package? Would the analyzer kind of flow through, and trying to get a way to but it didn't work. So I've lost days of my life trying to solve this one, and still stuck. So if anybody out there knows somebody who's really good at analyzers, source generators, Roslyn, send them our way, because we could definitely use some help. But again, the good news is nothing's necessarily broken. It's just kind of a weird caveat if you're going to use the MAUI Community Toolkit in your library.
Maybe we should reach out to Stefan.
Yeah, let's get him in.
All right, we got a couple of minutes left. So I don't know, is there... I'd love to talk about this one. Actually, I don't. It's giving me nightmares. Why is this basic stuff so hard for media controls? But is there anything more important that we want to talk about? I see this one. Brandon, you were going to say something about it?
Yeah, so I know we've chatted about this in GitHub, but yeah, just wanted to call out that. Well, so first of all, muting's hard because the different platforms handle it differently. So like if you want your video muted, but then the user uses the hardware buttons to change the volume, what happens? And so, the reason why I just want to bring this up today is I'm of the opinion, and wanted to just double check that I'm aligned with everybody else, or everybody else is aligned with me, or maybe I'm crazy, but that despite what the platform specific behavior is, when we implement this feature, this should mute feature, that it should behave the same across platforms. So if we can, on iOS, if we're muted and the hardware buttons allow the user to unmute, then on Android it should be the same. And I don't know if that's how it works by default, but that's kind of my feeling, because we'll probably get a bug in the future if somebody says Android doesn't mute right.
The hardware button is actually a good one. I should I should test that, because what I've been testing, and I assume that also gets controlled by like the hardware button, is the hard thing in this case is Android, which doesn't really have the concept of muting. It doesn't really have a Boolean of say, hey, muted or not muted, while Windows and Tizen and iOS have. So then it's easy, right? You just say muted, unmuted, and then basically all the rest of the behavior is up to whatever the OS does. But for Android, it isn't there. So for Android, what I try to do is set the volume to 0. But then it's like, hey, what are the other platforms doing? Are they actually also setting the volume to 0? Or is it restoring the volume after you unmute? Or blah, 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 blah. So that makes it very hard. And what I did right now, I put a message in there. And if you have any opinions about that, Brandon or anyone else, I think it's consistent across platforms now. And what I did for Android as well is whenever you're muted, if you set the volume in code, so as a developer, if you set the volume property, it doesn't get unmuted, but it will apply that volume level whenever you do unmute, right? And whenever you use the platform controls, so you can use the platform controls on your player as well to set the volume, which is something that you cannot do. There's not a volume slider on Android. There is a volume slider on iOS and Windows. And whenever you slide that, it does unmute, which is kind of like it matches that platform. So I kind of liked that you could programmatically influence the volume without unmuting. And that whenever you use the visual controls, that it does unmute. That feels natural to the user, I would think, at least on the platforms, because it's built that way. But it is not consistent with, like, setting the volume does unmute, period. Because if you're now setting it from code, it does something else than whenever the user does it on screen. So I'm not sure if that's necessarily something bad or...
We can leave that power to the developer, though, can't we? Because if they programmatically
changing
the volume, they can programmatically
exactly,
change
yeah.
it on.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the thing. Like, the developer can now choose if they want to mimic that behavior by whenever volume changes. Might be a good addition to add an event for that. Then they can, unmute themselves. So we leave that choice to them, basically. So that was also my idea with this, what I landed on.
Cool. And we'll add all that in the IntelliSense XML docs for anybody who didn't quite follow what we're talking about.
Exactly. So I guess this is going to be the last one because we only have a couple of minutes left. Support for simultaneous toast notifications. I guess this is Vlad's territory.
Yeah.
The Toastmaster.
Yeah, let me share this screen again.
Is Toastmasters a thing?
It is now.
In Europe?
Yeah, this idea came from Blazor. And I found this in Mood Blazor, one of my favorite frameworks for working with Blazor. So what this feature is about. So here, snack bar and toast allow to display multiple of them. You can see I can click and they display it in stack. But on Android, this feature is limited to display only one snack bar and toast at the same time. On the other hand, on Windows, on iOS, we have a custom implementation. On Windows, we use native notifications, so we can display multiple notifications at the same time. On iOS, we also have a custom implementation with our render at the bottom of the screen of the snack bar, so we can also display them in stack. And the main question here comes that should we change the default behavior of Android and have a custom implementation to allow displaying multiple toasts at the same time, or we should follow the default design, and as Android has only one instance of toast of snack bar displayed at the same time.
I think I
we should allow
prefer to.
users to display multiple of them.
I quite like the fact, because I think when we originally did Snackbar, when we brought it over from the Xamarin Community Toolkit, we had the ability to add more buttons than were actually available on Android, and we decided that we just go with the most common set of functionality. So if we're going to change it so you can show multiple on other platforms, I'd prefer that Android did the same. So we've got a common set of behavior.
Yeah, if we decide to remove different, like have our own implementation on Android, we can enhance at least Snackbar with multiple implementations, like multiple buttons, custom position, custom variants, whatever we want, because it will be our own render of the Snackbar.
Yeah, I wonder because Snackbar and Toast are very much an Android thing, and Android has that specific implementation, which we essentially copied and kind of made it work on iOS. So I don't hate this idea. I love how that looks. I love the notifications stacking up. I could see use cases in my apps where I would want that. But maybe instead of calling it Toast or calling this snack bar, we create a new name, like this is a new control, and under the hood, like it could reuse our existing code from iOS. We'd have to rebuild or create something new in Android. But yeah, maybe this is just a new feature called multi notifications, or I don't know. There's got to be a better name, but I hesitate calling it Toast and adding it to Toast just because, and I'm biased, but as a longtime Android developer, Toast is very specific and Snackbar is very specific to the platform, but at the same time, like this is pretty cool.
Yeah, and we even can implement it using the .NET MAUI controls, like absolute layout or grid. So it will appear somewhere. So it will be just a shared code. So we put content page, a content view of the main content, and inside of it there will be a stack of our notifications. So we don't even need to have a
notification
handler.
Stack. What?
Yeah.
Did we just find a name? Yeah.
So it can be much simpler controlled without any like handler architecture or something like that. So it will be much simpler. Yeah, but we can implement it. I probably don't know if such controller already exists. Maybe.
I mean, it's quite similar to showing a pop-up, isn't it?
Yeah.
Georgia suggested we call it crumpets, if that's a thing everyone is familiar with.
Very, very, very British of him.
All right, I just said it was the last one, but I got told in my ear by the director that we might want to sneak in one more. So Brandon, director, which one did you have in mind? Which one do you still wanted to discuss?
Yeah, so we've got. So I know I just announced the exciting new typed binding support, or compiled bindings if you're used to it in XAML, for the MAUI Markup library. But like I mentioned, Sean has been combing through the docs, tons and tons of work. I think you updated something like 38 files to show off this new binding behavior. And as he was going, Sean's like, hey, wait a minute. How do I use I-value converter with this new feature? And I go, oh, man, we can't. So what Sean's done is added this proposal, and I was hoping we could vote on it today. Long story short, it'll give us the ability to, there we go. So right now, you can add a converter in the current implementation, but it'll only take in a func. So you have to basically write your own function real quick. But this feature will allow you to add in like an I-value converter. So if you want to use the .NET MAUI Community Toolkit in conjunction with .NET MAUI Markup Community Toolkit, you can do that like Sean's showing off here. and then Sean can actually update the docs everywhere to recommend this. So yeah, I was hoping we could get a quick vote in. Any thoughts before we jump right into it?
I mean, the benefit would be that all of the docs can refer to the kind of the slightly more efficient way of doing the bindings.
And the developer experience, of course, it'll be much better.
It's a strange one though, isn't it? Because there is this crossover between when you're writing the more kind of the fluent UI, you typically might do the inline conversion rather than using the converter. But we do obviously ship a load of useful converters with the toolkit.
Yeah. Any comments or concerns before we jump straight into a vote? I know we're a little over time.
Nope. Let's do it. Let's vote. All in favor of adding this wonderful, amazing stuff?
Hey.
I think George in the chat is also saying, yes, let's do it. So, I mean, if George says it's okay, then we should do it.
Ship it. All right.
Ship it.
Thanks, guys. I'll update the status here.
Great.
Right now.
And with that, I mean, and on a positive note, and we surely did now. And so look forward to the release tomorrow. If we were talking to Kim and he was still in Australia, it would be tomorrow for him already. But, in about, I don't know, what time is it? 12 hours, it should be released. Then I'm awake again, refreshed, and I know which button to press. So that's what we're going to do. Thank you all so much for being here again in the chat, people here. And we'll see you next month, I guess, with all the latest and greatest updates, with everything that we have to tell you then.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Thank
All.
you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.